Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this big old ridiculous freaking light right here. This is the Olight X7R Marauder. Oh, we're marauding now. But anyways, first off though, before I go any further, full disclosure, I gotta thank Olight for sending this guy along. That's right, this was provided to me directly by the manufacturer as a review sample freebie sort of thing. I told them as always that I was gonna talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. It might be a gem, it might be junk. They still send it along, so there you go. But we just got to assume this is the best quality controlled Olight ever, and I've tried my best not to let this influence my review. Next thing, let's do a little bit of a size comparison right quick. First off, probably the most apt size comparison with this guy is this guy right here. This is a standard American 12 fluid ounce can of cream soda. And so you can see here is that overall, this is very, very similar, at least in the outer dimension here. This is about the same diameter here, and it shrinks down a little bit, but and weight-wise, the light's a little bit heavier, but still, yeah, that's absolutely this is a big freaking light here. Here it is against another comparable sort of light in terms of output and power. This is the EGTAC MX30L3, which is an absolutely large, ridiculous freaking knife. No, this is a light, but nonetheless, if it were a knife, that would be very large. Here it is against ThruNite Neutron LC, EGTAC D25A, and actually I'll bust out a standard CR120, or I'm sorry, God, this is an 18650 battery. You can see this thing is freaking huge. So, there you go. That's your size comparison for this guy. So let's go on ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting revised Marauder version. First off, on the good side, I do appreciate that this is a revised version. The original, the just plain Marauder, had a bunch of different features. It looked a little bit, frankly, less cool than this guy does, and the output was a little bit lower. This is a newer version, and I like the fact that they're willing to iterate on their product line. So often I find it to be the case, and I don't want to stereotype, but from especially smaller Chinese companies where it's just like, we'll make something when we'll ship something else. No, they're willing to take an existing design and make some changes. Some for the better, some for the worse, unfortunately. We'll talk about that. But that's good. Next thing, this has some very nice features to it. It is waterproof using the IPX7 standard, which is good. You can drop it in the drink, you're probably going to be fine. It has a proximity sensor, a motion sensor, which is good. This means that if you jostle the light will kind of glow. You can see in here it's sort of breathing in there. And if the light battery is very low, that'll turn red. If it's fine, it'll be green. But anyways, that's a nice thing, which means if you're reaching in your pack for this guy, you'll see it down there glowing, which helps to deal a little bit with this is another freaking black flashlight thing. Next thing, it's got this light sensor on the front of it here. You can see these are your 3 LEDs because it's packing 3 different LEDs. Then you've got this sensor, which basically means that if I put this up to my hand and then I trigger turbo mode, although things are heating up in there, it's going to downstep pretty quickly, realizing that, oh, wait a second, it is way too bright right now, given using this sensor. So this can basically tell if the light is directly up against something and then triggered. It'll be able to basically back it down very quickly so it doesn't do any thermal damage to whatever it's on or to the light itself. That's a good idea, and it's a safety measure, and it's kind of hilarious that lights are so powerful now that we have to think about safety measures, but indeed we do, and so here we are. So that's good. Next thing, this is kind of hard to see, but hopefully you're going to be able to pick up on it. Maybe you can see in there is a little blue ring that is glowing inside there. It's very, very dim, but I'll see, can I get this visible on the light? It's kind of something that's best seen by adjusted eyes, but this little blue ring underneath here is actually some sort of a night glow material, which actually will glow for a little while after you've used the light, which again helps you to locate the light in a dark situation, which I appreciate very much. It does have a lanyard loop, and it's kind of neatly stored in that it's, sorry, I don't keep fingernails, so this is sort of a problem. Oh, come on. Thing is, if you attach the lanyard, it's going to be popped out there. Oh, come off it. Guys, this is the disadvantage of this lanyard loop system. There we go. Now that I got a tool, there's your lanyard hole. And it's actually well positioned such that the lanyard will not be digging into your hand, etc. It allows, because they couldn't put it on the back here because this back part rotates in order to reveal the USB port, which we'll talk about shortly. But either way, I think it's a neat approach to lanyard holding given that you got this thing in the back there. So that's good. Next thing, this guy, although frankly, I think they probably could have just done a little scoop down there and have a little bar, whatever. Not a big deal, though. It does come with a lanyard that fits it well as a belt case, as well as a USB charger as well as a USB cable. All of those things are excellent. Next thing, this feels very solid. What I mean by that is I can kind of whack this against the table and there's really nothing jostling around. Compared to this guy, the MX30L3, yeah, that's the battery pack rattling around in there. That's not a great feeling. Is it a big deal? No, but this feels, it's got a strong solidity to it that I appreciate. Next thing, as I mentioned in here, this is USB rechargeable. See, watch. Oh yeah, that's right. You twist this guy and the little iris slides out of position, which reveals this USB-C power port. Now, this is a big difference. Many USB rechargeable lights at this point are using the previous micro USB standard. And micro USB is a standard. It is something you will find everywhere. USB-C is the wave of the future, which is good. I think in general, it's nice to move toward the future. And USB-C has a bunch of different implementation differences, things like that. You can get much faster charge rates with this guy than you could with micro and whatnot, as well as symmetrical connector. Look, USB-C is great. We'll talk about some troubles later on, but I like that this is a rechargeable light. You plug this guy in, and actually the entire port will glow either green if it's charged or red if it's not charged yet. And that's great. USB rechargeable lights are a game changer because you don't have to worry about fancy, CR123 charges, or 18650, whatever. That is an improvement, I think, for most people's lives. And the fact that they include the cable as well as the charger here is a beautiful thing. So that's good. Next thing, this has a fine interface, absolutely 100%. And I'm sorry, I got to say, I do appreciate that they're going to where the market is going with USB-C rather than staying a little bit farther behind. This is how we make progress, even if progress is occasionally hard fought. But anyways, that's good. Next thing, the interface on this guy is fine. If you hold down the interface, if you hold down the single button, it goes immediately into a moonlight sort of mode, which is still 10 lumens, by the way. If you just press, it'll go into the saved mode. And then if you hold down, it'll start cycling through the other modes, brighter and brighter, then it'll go back down, and so forth. So it'll cycle through those three modes. If the light is off and you have it in the hand, and then you double click it, it'll go into turbo mode, which is absolutely freaking absurd here. I'm trying to point it off camera. Then if you double click again, goes into Turbo S mode, which is even more absurd. Good God, you see every little bit of spittle in there. Yikes. But anyways, that's a good thing. Oh, see, look, now you can see that little bit of glow in the darkitude down in there. Anyways, that's beside the point. But the interface works just fine, and I think it works. I don't know. I like the ability to go straight to turbo. I like the ability to go reliably straight to moonlight mode, which is something you're going to want to be doing very often if you're trying to hold on to your night vision. And so I think it works nicely. That's good. Next thing, the switch on this guy is actually well protected. What you can see here is that it's very much recessed. It's very nicely positioned for a thumb to get in there from either hand, but it's very hard. For instance, I can't push this down and then hit the switch, unlike some other models, like for instance this Through Night here, where if you do that, you absolutely can. So I appreciate that they've taken the steps to recess this switch. It works very, very well. Next thing, this is actually pretty compact all told. Like I said, I was comparing it to this guy, which has very, very similar outputs and run times. Actually, I'm sorry, the outputs on this guy are a little bit lower, but you can see this is a much, much bigger light than this guy is down here. I mean, think about it. This is about the size of a can of soda, but it's not, it's a little smaller in a couple of dimensions. So, I think it's pretty reasonable. We're pretty used to holding those in the hand. We can hold this one too. Next thing, this does tail stand well because the back of it is completely flat. And that means something, I think, more meaningful on one of these kinds of lights here. This is a light that I can very easily, what I'm going to do is set this off to the side of the camera here, and then I'm going to turn it on to turbo and then double turbo. Actually, I'll hold it up, and you can see that the room just got a lot brighter as a result. And so this is something that could actually light a reasonably sized room just by pointing it up at the ceiling for a little while. That is, that's a meaningful thing, and especially during power outages, having these kinds of super powerful lights for a ceiling bounce can be a really nice thing. I'm a big fan of that, and so that's good. Then finally, I gotta say I do like the beam pattern on it, and I'll see if I can show it off by going into low mode here. What you can see here is that you've got a fair amount of spot, but then there's also a fair amount of bleed all around that spot, which is good. This is not an oh my god super spotty light, as opposed to, for instance, this guy, which is oh my god super spotty, especially if I take this reflector off here. I mean, when we turn this on, whoa there, sorry, disco mode, it has a very, very defined spot. And so I like very much the more broadly dispersed pattern of this guy, because how often are you really needing to shoot 1.5 miles with your light, so to speak, versus how much you you're just trying to light up a large area for looking for something. So I think this is a really nice choice for that. And so to me, all of that is the good. It's got a nice beam pattern here. It tail stands really well. It's actually relatively compact given the power of it. It's got a well-protected switch, a fine interface. It's USB rechargeable using USB-C, which is a nice thing. At least it will be. It's a very solid feeling light, and it's got the nice set of features that you would kind of expect. On the great side, look, this is, oh my god, bright. I mean, seriously. This has two different turbo modes. One of them gives you 3 minutes at 12,000 lumens. That's the Turbo S mode, where you double-click, then you double-click again. And then the other one lasts 12 minutes at 7,000 lumens, which is still an absurdly bright number. Both of those numbers, the 12 minutes and the 3 minutes, are thermally limited. So on a really cold day, you might actually get a little bit more time because it's not going to heat up quite as quickly. But the thing is, 12,000 versus 7,000 lumens, due to the nature of the lumen scale and our perception of brightness, it's actually not as big a difference as you'd think. You know, perceptually speaking, entirely just subjectively, I'm bouncing this around in a room, it feels maybe, maybe a fifth or so, a quarter or so brighter than when you go up to the 12,000 lumens. It's just, that's the nature of how it seems. And so don't look at that as being like, oh my God, you only get a little time at 12,000 lumens? What kind of spotlight is this? Look, 7,000 is still more than enough. And frankly, both of those high settings, both of the turbo modes on this guy are so bright as to be uncomfortable indoors. I mean, using this guy in my apartment, I need sunglasses. That's just a simple fact of life. I mean, at the highest settings, this is uncomfortable in a lot of settings. Outdoors, it's incredible. But yeah, so those are the turbo modes, which really do feel like you've got the sun in your pocket. The long-term mode, the highest long-term mode that can run indefinitely, indefinitely until the battery pack goes, is 3,000 lumens, which is still really freaking bright. And you get 2 hours and 10 minutes of that. You can run in medium mode, which is 1,000 lumens. You can run there for 6 hours. You can get the low mode, which is 500 lumens, which is 14 hours. And then you go into your nightlight mode at 10 lumens, and you get 30 whole days of that. The thing is, practically speaking, 500 lumens is still very bright for indoor exploration, and is still more than competent for outdoors. And so you get a full 14 hours worth of that. It's just only when you go to the searchlight mode that you start going. But the thing is, this is really freaking bright. This is as bright a light as I think any human needs to carry on a regular basis. I mean, okay, I need to back that way off there. This is the brightest possible light that any human would need to carry on a regular basis. There you go. Most humans are going to be just fine with something like this little guy, which is a lot less bright, but still more than enough for most. So anyways, that to me, though, is what is great about this is, oh my God, is this thing bright. It's absurd, frankly. And so that's kind of cool. This is a really fun thing to show off. So there you go. On the bad side, this does have some bad elements to it. To start with, it is very freaking heavy. I mean, seriously, look at this guy here. We are coming in at approximately 23.19 ounces. Is that the top of my scale? No, okay, it does go over. Okay, 23, that's a lot of freaking, oh man, is this thing heavy. And it's very dense, honestly. It's not super pleasant to carry, and especially to point forward for a long-term sort of use. I mean, try walking around all day holding a Coke can like this, although the Coke can is going to be a lot less. Is only 13 ounces. You know, something that's twice as dense as this, yeah, that's freaking heavy. So that's a little less than pleasant sometimes. Next thing, it's very expensive. It's $280 for this particular flashlight. Holy crap, is that pricey. I kind of get it at some level. It's a specialized tool. It does have a lot of power to it, but yeah, it's going to take this off consideration for a long time. And especially when there are so many lights that you can get that are absolutely perfectly freaking bright, that are going to be much, much cheaper. This is like $50 and is more light than most people need. This is a specialized tool. Next thing, you know, I gotta say, although I like very much the brightness of it, the run times aren't all that incredible. I mean, the fact that the low setting is at 14 hours, I mean, that's good, that's solid, but for something this big, I'd almost like an even lower setting that's, you know, great for indoor use, but runs for a full day or something like that. That would give me a little bit more flexibility, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But at some level, it's amazing that you can have a light that's this big. But because it's really aimed at those super bright modes, the runtimes don't feel all that crazy exceptional. Although I'll say they're right in the same range as the EGTAC here. So, I mean, it is in line. So there you go. Next thing, there is no strong battery indicator here. I mean, you can see this guy lights up, and when it's too low, it'll turn red, but it's not the case that I can, for instance, I don't know, quadruple click this, and it'll blink, 3 times for 75% charge, whatever. I'd like to have something like that, some sort of ability to do that. Not a big deal, but it's a deal. This is, unfortunately, it does have some of the same color issues that, a lot of these lights are having lately, where it's more greenish in the center, more blue on the outside. This actually doesn't feel as bad and as noticeable as some. This through night, for instance, is much worse in that domain where you get the yellow versus the... but still, that's definitely... There's a lot of color differentiation throughout the range of it there. Then finally, on the bad side, I'd like to see more mode selection gradients. To me, like I said, the low is actually still pretty high. 500 lumens is a lot of light. And so I'd like to see there be something, an extra low mode or something like that. And frankly, this is a light that has a huge range. And the fact that we only effectively get 5 settings. We get the turbos, which are only temporary. Then we get, high, medium, low, and then moonlight. That's just not great. I'd love to see 5 or 6 modes or even something more continuous. Like this through night has a little trick here. If you hold down the button, it'll just get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And then it'll, on the bottom end, come back around and get brighter and brighter and brighter. This means that you can perfectly dial in the amount of light that you want, whereas on this guy, you really don't get that many options here. And this is a big deal for runtime specifically. Like I said, there are many times, even just using this around the house or outdoors, where it's like, okay, the low mode, the moonlight is a little too bright, but the low mode is a little too high. If I could go in the middle, I'd get better run times. That'd be important. So, to me, those are the bad things. I'd like to see more gradiency in their mode selection, maybe 5 or 6 modes in the middle there rather than just the 3. I'd like to see them address the color issues. There's no battery indicator that's really, it doesn't give you great information. The runtimes are not really as incredible as you'd expect for a battery this big, but it is really aiming towards bright above long term. It is $280 and it is very, very, very heavy, which makes it a little less than pleasant to carry in a long-term sort of situation. The ugly front, couple of issues. This does have software lockout, which means if I hold this down for a while, it goes into moonlight mode and then it shuts back off again. Now if I hit this button, it'll just flash the moonlight once saying, hey, jackass, you're in lockout mode. And then at that point, if you hold it down again, it'll come out of lockout mode. But the problem is, a lockout mode that is disabled by pressing down on the button for a while is not a good lockout mode. Because so often, if you've got this guy just rolling around in your pack, it's going to end up rolling against something, and then guess what? You just turn the light on. That's not great. Guys, that kind of defeats the point of lockout. And given the fact that this light doesn't have a hardware lockout where you can sort of untwist it slightly, and then no matter what you do, you can't turn it on. We'll talk about that in a second there. That's just not great. I mean, the switch being recessed makes this less of an issue, but these lockout modes, people aren't thinking about them, and it's bugging me lately. Next thing, USB charging here on the USB-C front is not great, because so often USB-C is now meaning USB-C power delivery. This is a different mode. If you have a laptop, a tablet, something like that that charges with USB-C, chances are it's using the power delivery spec. The thing is, this is not. So I have a USB-C charger right over there for my computer. If I plug that into this light, absolutely nothing happens. No one's charging, no one's getting any power. It's not the case that it can't deliver power to it. It's fine. It's just they're not speaking the same language here. Instead, this needs to be plugged into a USB-C, USB 3C charging compatible charger, which is most chargers that are meant to charge with USB, but it needs to have a USB-C cable on the... The thing is... That's kind of ugly, unfortunately. This is more of a problem with USB-C, I think, than this guy. But really, if you're going to make something that supports USB-C, you should allow it to support a variety of specs. You should let it do power delivery if that's what the charger is wanting to do. You should let it do otherwise. I know it adds a little bit of cost, it adds a little complication, but right now, USB-C is not super reliable as a result of these complications, and it makes this light a little bit less compatible than you think. If you're thinking, well, great, I'll use my laptop charger. No, probably not. Instead, you're going to need another USB-C cable that's plugged into a more conventional sort of multi-port charger thing, or you can use the built-in one. It's not a huge deal, but it is definitely a deal. Then finally, the biggest deal, and the real turd in this Light's Punch Bowl, is the fact that this is using a proprietary battery pack that cannot be exchanged. Previous versions of this light used 4 18650 batteries, but unfortunately here they have opted to put this light on lockdown. In fact, you cannot even open this light up without a special tool. Twisting in the back does this, and there's no way to twist in the front. They don't even tell you how to twist this how to unlock this light here. And the batteries, the thing with this is that the battery of a light is an expendable item. You can recharge this one, absolutely, but after a while it'll hold less and less and less charge. You have to plan for a long-term wear of your batteries. It's inevitable. And Olight has said that they will service the battery if you send them the light, or that they will send you a battery pack and a tool down the road if you need to service it. But the thing is, I've heard, unfortunately, more so than a lot of brands, I've heard disappointing stories about Olight's service, so I'm not really loving a solution to long-term wear which requires a small company to send you service parts or take the thing back. I mean, this is a solved problem in so many lights these days. Just buy another battery, but this one has made that problem unsolved just to make it proprietary, and I don't love that. What this also means is that if you are out and about, if you're the kind of person who is going to be using a light all night long, and you use the 2 full hours of high mode, which is very plausible if you're outdoors search and rescuing and whatnot, you are basically screwed, because this light takes 3.5 hours to recharge, which is longer than its runtime on high. So it's not like you can buy 2 of them and just swap back and forth while the other one is charging. It's simply not the case. And so rather than just carrying the light and then a few extra batteries to get through the night, you end up having to buy and carry 3 different $280 lights. And you've got 1 or 2 of them charging at any given moment. I mean, look, I know that's not what you're actually going to do. You're going to buy a different light. You're going to use truck-mounted lights or something like that. But guys, come on. This is a solved problem. You can just buy spare batteries and swap them in when the other ones die on most lights. But again, that's not the approach they chose to take here, and that just kind of sucks. And at the very least, what they should be letting you do here, if they do need to use a proprietary battery pack for some freaking reason, they should allow you to swap that in straightforwardly, and they should sell more packs. So it should be the case that I can buy 3 of those packs, I can charge 3 of those packs, and throw them in there. That way, when one dies, I swap in the next one. No freaking problem, but I don't freaking know. So anyways, that to me is the ugliest, that they're using a proprietary battery pack, which is both complicated in terms of long-term wear and replacement, as well as using the light, that is, for long periods of time on high. It is using USB, and right now USB charging is terribly inconsistent, and this is sort of a victim of that as well. And then finally, lockout mode should not be disabled by pressing up against the button accidentally. That's kind of defeating the freaking point. So final conclusions on this guy. Look, at some level, this light is incredible. It is a great light. I want to make 100% clear about that. It puts out an incredible amount of light from a really compact size. This is like a portable sun. It is borderline weird. It is neat at that level. And like, this is one of those lights that you show somebody who's not used to flashlights and they're just like, oh my God. And for a while there, I thought I had seen bright flashlights. And then there's this, then there's these kinds of things. And it's just like, oh my God. It's amazing. It's incredible. Yet, unfortunately, this guy, despite being kind of amazing and incredible, does have some practical issues because it is absolutely pricey. The range of modes is pretty unbalanced, and it's pretty oddly spaced. USB-C charging is honestly not implemented terribly flexibly here. I wish they'd have at least allowed the device to talk to power delivery ports and figure out something that would work, because that really does write off a lot of the USB charges that are already in your life. And then finally, the proprietary locked-in battery pack is really unpleasant. I mean, I get it for compactness, rechargeability, but the thing is, batteries are not something you're allowed to make non-user replaceable. I mean, it sucks enough when Apple does it, but they are a multi-bazillion dollar company with a long history, service centers down the road from me, that kind of thing. But when a relatively obscure company does this, and especially a company where I've heard a lot of issues, it sounds like they need to work on their customer service some, is doing that. It's really unfortunate. And, if this were a $70 light and they did that, then okay, I guess. But $280 is a lot to spend on a light whose long-term utility depends on Olight still being around and willing to replace the pack. And given that the runtimes aren't super long either, and the charging isn't that fast, this is a serious functional flaw for people using a light all night. So I think this light would be a lot better had they used some kind of an off-the-shelf size, even if it's some weird, obscure size. 33 650. I don't even know if that's a thing. It probably is. That's probably what's in there. I don't know. But the thing is, that way if Olight crumbled next week, I would still have a good light in 4 to 5 years when it's time to swap out this battery. Or they could at least make it easy to replace and sell spares, which would both allow me to pick up a spare to use in the long term there, or it would help to satisfy the up-all-night sort of crew. But either way, I mean, that bugs me, because aside from that issue, I really do like the light. It's got a lot of really excellent benefits. It's powerful as heck. They're doing a bunch of things right here. It's USB recharged, which is the future, damn it. And it means that this is a great choice for a lot of people, particularly if you only need a very bright light very briefly, and if you value recharging as much as I do. But unfortunately, as I said, there are some bad decisions here, and it means that, unfortunately, they've locked themselves out of gem status by doing it. So anyways, there you go. It's a great light, but it's got some pretty heavy flaws there. Hope this has been interesting to you and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.